What is up, everybody? This is your boy, Teran Rodriguez, bringing you another edition of Set Point. And it's a big week this week, not just because of what's going on in the outside world, but what's going to be happening in the volleyball world. But first, last week's matchup between Kentucky and Missouri had themselves quite the anticlimactic ending as Kentucky won both matchups. Are the Wildcats for real? And what does this say about the Tigers of Missouri? The ACC wrapped up play last week as North Carolina, Duke, and Virginia Tech had key matchups in the ACC Central. Which team came out up on top, and which team fell flat on their face? Also, we have the big matchup of the week. No.2 Baylor versus No.1 Texas. The Big 12 supremacy matchup. Will the Longhorns continue their perfect season, or will the Bears claw their way past the Longhorns? Also, we have ourselves a sneaky good game in the SEC. There's not a whole lot of big games and noteworthy games to preview this week, but there is one good game in the SEC. Which are the two lucky teams that will be facing each other in this sneaky good game? All that and more here on Set Point. This is Teran Rodriguez bringing you another edition of Set Point here on iSports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And welcome to another edition of Set Point here on iSports Radio. Thank you all for tuning in to episode 62. It is greatly appreciated, and I really do appreciate being here on this Tuesday afternoon. I don't know about you all, but I can't believe it's November already. And I also can't believe daylight savings is a thing. Like, it just really bothers me. I don't know what it is, and it got to the point where I actually had to turn on my upper light in my room. So, yeah, I don't know. Like, I just don't know what it is, but it is what it is. So, anyway, so let's go through these matchups. We're going to start with the ones that didn't ultimately matter. Let's start with Baylor and West Virginia. So Baylor, West Virginia, I didn't think this was going to be a big series, but it was big in the sense of for Baylor, considering they had them. This was kind of a trap game. And last week I pretty much talked about how they need to get past West Virginia because, believe it or not, West Virginia was actually ranked in the top 15 polls. They were ranked number 15. So this was a match that Baylor couldn't overlook because they can't overlook anyone before they face Texas this upcoming week. So in their matchup against West Virginia, the first matchup was quite the fascinating matchup as West Virginia came to play. Despite being the road team, they came ready to go. They took the first set 25-22, and I was even looking like, is this going to be an upset? Like, I was thinking that it might be a 5-setter. I'm like, this one may go 5. And West Virginia may actually force themselves into the Big 12 spoiler chamber. So, and then Baylor decided to actually play volleyball. They actually showed up in the second set, had a little trouble from West Virginia, but then they dominated this. They pretty much took the second set 25-20. Then in the third set, everything managed to fall apart for West Virginia, as Baylor just showed why they were the number 2 team in the nation, taking the third set 25-12. And then the fourth set, Baylor just also dominated and won that set 25-16. And it was basically the Yasonia Presley show. Like, she was just... There's a reason why she is the reigning ACC Player of the Year. So, she had 14 kills, but it was just an overall distributive matchup as Marquis Vandermark and Lauren Harrison also chipped in 11 kills. And that's the thing about Baylor. Whenever they have other players stepping up for Baylor, it just makes them a much better and talented team. Like, Presley can't really do it all by herself, so it's good that she has a hitting camaraderie. And as for West Virginia, they were led by Kristen Lux, who had 10 kills, as well as Megan Dombrowski, and then Natalie Petrova had 6 kills and whatnot. I'm just going to probably speed through this because this matchup wasn't really the matchup I was expecting. Like, the second, just quick and easy. In the second match, it was just more so Baylor. Like, Baylor actually, it was almost a carbon copy of the second, third, and fourth set of the first match. Baylor took a somewhat competitive first set, 25-20. Then the second set, Baylor just wrecked West Virginia 25-14, and then in the third set, they took it 25-16, completing the sweep. And in the second match between West Virginia, Yasonia Presley had 17 kills, but she didn't have a single hitting error. And I pretty much said that on Twitter. Those are Madden numbers right there. Madden numbers, I tell you. And even Baylor said that those were video game numbers. And it's funny because Madden is a video game. And Yasonia had 17 kills, hitting percentage of .654, and 0 hitting errors. Again, that's just crazy. And also, Lauren Harrison, the sophomore outside hitter, had 13 kills, only 1 hitting error for a hitting percentage of .545, which is darn impressive. And again, those are Madden numbers. Like, it's just amazing. It's just absolutely amazing. And you can't really say enough about those two. And like I said, even the Baylor Twitter account said video game numbers. So it's crazy, man. So I'm glad Baylor actually decided to play some volleyball. I'm really surprised they allowed West Virginia to take that first set. It's not that West Virginia is bad per se, but when it comes to the Big 12, it's just a 2-horse race, as I'm about to show you all in a little bit, as the Big 12 is just a 2-horse race. Looking at the current Big 12 standings, Texas is in first place at 10-0, and then Baylor is in second place at 11-1. And then the third place team behind Baylor, everyone, hold the phone, everyone. The third place team behind 11-1 Baylor is Kansas State, who is a whopping 6-4. Kansas State is 6-4. That is the third place team in the Big 12. I just don't. I can't believe it. Like, there's a 2-horse race, and then there's being 5 games behind the second place team. Why can't the Big 12 ever be competitive? But that's not the funnier part. The funnier part is West Virginia is the fourth place team at 5-5, and the fifth place team in the Big 12 conference. Hold on, everybody, hold the phone. Like, the fifth place team from the Big 12 is none other than Texas Tech, who's a whopping. Oh my gosh! Sorry if you all got that notification, but Texas Tech is a whopping 3-7. A fifth place team is 3-7. I know it's only 10. There's only been 10 games playing, and there's 6 games remaining. But 3 wins is your fifth place team. Oh my no! And then Oklahoma is 2-6. Iowa State is 2-6. Kansas is 2-8, and TCU was just 1-5 because I guess that's how their schedule works and whatnot. Derp. But this is why I'm not the biggest fan of the Big 12, because there's hardly any competition. I mean, Kansas State is probably the most improved team of the conference because they have a star outside hitter, freshman outside hitter named Aaliyah Carter. She is an absolute beast. Like, holy moly, she was doing great. And I will say this about Kansas State: they are the only team to push No.1 Texas to a 5th set. It might happen this weekend, but I'll just say this: the Big 12 is just so uncompetitive outside of Baylor and Texas. Like, And that's kind of the thing that hurts Baylor and Texas going into the NCAA tournament. Lack of actual backbone competition. It's not like the Big Ten where it's like a bloodbath between everybody except for like maybe Northwestern or Rutgers. No offense to those schools, of course. And then it's also like the Pac-12 where even Oregon State can be competitive, unless they're facing Stanford, of course. But I digress. Like, that's what hurts Baylor and Texas. Though that's what can hurt them going into the NCAA tournament. And then you have teams like Louisville, which beat Texas in the Sweet 16, which knocked off Texas in 5 sets, which plays in the ever-so-competitive ACC, which I've been talking about all fall. And then you also have Wisconsin, which, like I said, they play in the Big Ten, where it's a bloodbath every night, facing teams like Penn State, Nebraska, Minnesota. Heck, Purdue is up there too, and I think Michigan is also up there as well, if I'm not mistaken. Either way, the Big 12, this is what happens in the Big 12. Like 2-horse races is just so unhealthy for conferences and for conference champions. That's just me, though. So anyway, I'll be previewing Baylor at Texas in the second segment of the show. But for the rest of the recaps of last weekend's matchups, let's recap the final ACC matchups. This is the last week of the fall portion of the ACC. For those that don't know, in January of 2021, I think mid-January or late January of 2021, the NCAA volleyball season will continue. So every team is going to be able to get a chance to play, such as the Pac-12, the Big West Conference, the Big Ten, the Ivy League, the ACC, or the AAC, etc., etc. The Mountain West Conference, the WAC, the list goes on and on. So, anyway, back to the remainder of the ACC matchups. So, when it comes to the ACC, I want to say Clemson beat Wake Forest twice, which I'm just going to throw that out there. No one really cares about Clemson beating Wake Forest in women's volleyball. It wasn't really the matchup that everyone wanted to see. Like, I knew Clemson was going to win because Wake Forest is not that good. So it's not that I don't like those two, but they just aren't they're just not like the teams that are like up there. They're not like Georgia Tech or Notre Dame or Pitt or Louisville and whatnot. Not trying to be mean or anything, but it's just the truth. But I digress. Okay, so we got those two matchups out of the way. Now let's get into the matchups that truly matter. So Duke at Virginia. Keep in mind, Virginia had to play not one, not two, but 3 straight matchups. They had to play on Friday, Halloween Saturday, and then the day after Halloween. So they had a whopping 3 matches in a row, and they were all on the road. They were all on the road in North Carolina. Virginia's first matchup came against Duke, and let's just say Duke gave them some home cooking, as Duke pretty much brought out the brooms and swept away Virginia. And I didn't really see this matchup, but I didn't miss a whole lot personally. Duke swept Virginia. The first set was 25-21. The second set was 25-19. And the third set was 25-22. It was just more so Duke was better than Virginia. And you kind of feel for Virginia because they got a COVID outbreak in the middle of September, and then they had to shuffle around I think it was early September, not middle September, but either way, they had to shuffle around their schedule, and that kind of threw them for a loop, so they just weren't really and then they also dealt with injuries, so they had to postpone their matchups, and they had to postpone their early matchups with North Carolina and then move it elsewhere, and then they also had to postpone their matchup against Duke and move it to late October. So that's why all of these matchups are played in the final week of October / first day of November. So either way, it was just a tough matchup for Virginia, and they were basically going on the road. And like I said, quick and dirty. Duke just took him to the woodshed, and it wasn't really close. I mean, Duke didn't even have to go all out. Their kill leaders were Ade Owokonrian and Gracie Johnson, who each had 10 kills apiece. And Mackenzie Cole had 8 service aces. That's what stood out to me. I'm like, whoa. Like, that's amazing. 6 service aces. That is a beautiful thing right there. So, Duke basically just brought out the broom, swept Virginia, and they finished their season 6-2, which is not bad considering how much I bagged on Duke for not playing a whole lot of stiff competition until I found out that they were divided into a region with all the other ACC teams. And one thing I will say about Duke is I think this team could have ran the table when it came to being in the ACC Central, because I think they could have swept the season series against North Carolina, and they could have swept the season series against Virginia Tech, as I'm going to get into a little bit later. But overall, Duke being in the top 15 isn't really bad. I think that's pretty impressive, honestly. I'll be giving my final weigh-in on the ACC as a whole, with all the dividing of the regions of that of the whole conference. But either way, it was a good season for Duke. Or a good fall season. Their season will continue in January, so good stuff right there for Duke. All right, so now let's get into the matchups that kind of actually mattered more. So let's get into the first matchup between Virginia Tech and Duke. So I predicted Virginia Tech was going to win both these matchups, and then North Carolina and Duke were going to finish 6-2, which would be a 3-way tie atop the ACC Central. Keep in mind, winning the ACC Central, ACC South, and ACC North isn't going to mean anything, because I think everything's going to continue in the winner of 2021. So, as for Virginia Tech, I was so disappointed in Virginia Tech. They played NC State. NC State was 2-4. Virginia Tech was 4-2. They were coming off of a split against Duke, which was kind of impressive. It was their first win against a ranked team since I think they played Duke. Either way, NC State came out with some home cooking as they took the first set 28-26. And winning that tight first set really helped the Wolfpack as they took the second set 25-18, and then the third set, Virginia Tech was just so gassed and overwhelmed that NC State took the third set 25-14, and then they swept Virginia Tech. I was so disappointed in Virginia Tech. I thought they were so much better than that. NC State made them look like nearly a JV squad. I'm not trying to bag or anything, but you look at the hitting percentages for Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech hit 250 in the first set, but in the second set, Virginia Tech hit -54. You can't win a game hitting -54. And then in set 3, they didn't hit in the negatives, but they hit 75. That's less than 10%. What are you doing, Virginia Tech? I get Virginia Tech isn't as good as Duke or North Carolina in this region, but you just laid the biggest egg on the road. You could have closed out the fall season 6-2. You could have gotten yourself momentum going into your game on Halloween. I was so flabbergasted when I found that. The good thing about the Hokies, well, actually, no, there was no good things about the Hokies. Their kill leaders each had 7 kills. Ashley Homan, Marissa Sergio, and Katie Smith each had 7 kills. That's when you know Virginia Tech had probably an off night, because all their kill leaders had the same number of kills, which is kind of surprising. They only had 1 service ace, but then again, NC State only had 3 service aces on the night, so there was that. In terms of blocks, Virginia Tech outblocked NC State 9-6. In terms of digs, NC State outdug Virginia Tech 55-49, and that's pretty much your. But yeah, and in terms of digs, Virginia Tech only had one player that was in double digits in terms of digs, and that was Logan Mosley. NC State had 3 players that had double-digit digs, with Savannah Bryant leading the way with 15 digs. Kylie Frazier and Kristen McDaniel each had 10 digs. In terms of kills, they were led by Melissa Evans and Jade Parchment, who each had 16 kills. That was probably their dynamic duo right there. And Kristen McDaniel also notched a double-double, adding 32 assists. So that was some good stuff. I like it. So overall, that was just a good overall home win for NC State. The thing about NC State is that they started their season 0-4, and then they won this matchup. So now they're 3-4, which is cool. And then the second matchup between Virginia Tech and NC State, this one seemed to have been worse for Virginia Tech. Oh, by the way, in terms of hitting percentage for NC State, they hit .241, and as for Virginia Tech, they hit only 88 in the first match, which is very disappointing. I think that's not what you want to see if you're Virginia Tech. I thought Virginia Tech was better than this, especially when they got notched wins over North Carolina and Duke. Where are you, Virginia Tech? Okay, now for the second match. The second match was just as disappointing as the first match, as NC State dominated the first set, 25-15. Then the second set, Virginia Tech tried to be a little competitive, but NC State was just the better home team, as they took the second set 25-19. Then the third set, it got really ugly for Virginia Tech, as NC State there was no answer for NC State, as they dominated the third set 25-10. When you hold your opponent to only 10 points, that's when you did everything right, and the team that scored 10 points did everything wrong. And you look at the match. The first set, Virginia Tech only hit 83. The second set, they hit 77. And then the final set, Virginia Tech hit a whopping -111. When you're hitting negative triple digits, you are not hitting the ball right, you are shell-shocked to death, and more importantly, you're just mentally checked out. I couldn't believe it. I don't know if Virginia Tech was at full strength, or maybe they had another semi-COVID outbreak, but either way, I expected them to have a little more fight against NC State. NC State, on the other hand, hit .278 for the match, and they hit .391 in set number 3, which was a number that stood out. And they also had NC State also had 7 service aces and 50, and they outdug Virginia Tech 55-39. That's when you know it was just such an off night for Virginia Tech, and it's disappointing. And in terms of and again, when it comes to Virginia Tech, they didn't have anyone that cracked double digits in kills. Before we move on, I actually got to give a shout to Larry B in the chat room and Adam Karnick saying, hard to win if you're not there mentally. Facts. And I don't know what happened with Virginia Tech. Marissa Cerchio had 7 kills, Ashley Homan had 5 kills, and Katie Smith had 4 kills. That's just how shoddy their night was. And those 3 combined for 16 out of Virginia Tech's 24 kills. Again, that just goes to show you that their night offensively was just so lackluster, especially when you're hitting low percentages. As in the whole match, Virginia Tech only hit 29. Again, when you're hitting below 100, that's when everything just goes awry. And then when you're hitting in the negatives, that's when you've hit below rock bottom. So anyway, NC State for the match hit .278. I already said that. I just said they hit .278 and they had a hitting percentage of .391. They were led by Jade Parchment, who had 14 kills. Melissa Evans had 9 kills, and Lydia Adam had 5 kills. In terms of aces, they got 2 aces from the Jade Parchment and Melissa Evans led the ace department with 2 apiece. In terms of blocks, they only outblocked Virginia Tech. NC State only outblocked Virginia Tech 5-6, or 6-5, which is surprising, but not really surprising. In terms of digs, now like I said, NC State had 55 digs. 13 of them came courtesy of Kaylee Frazier. Jade Parchment and Melissa Evans each had 12 digs apiece, which is very impressive. When your defense is all over the place and scampering around and keeping the ball away from touching the ground, that's when your team is at your best, because defense wins championships. And thank you to Marcus Losgreat for tuning in the chat room. Thanks for dropping by, buddy. I definitely appreciate you. So, just talking some NC State and Virginia Tech volleyball. So NC State, which started the season 0-4, finished their fall season 4-4, which is pretty good. Virginia Tech finished their fall season 4-4, and while it wasn't the prettiest ending, they at least got some quality wins over Duke and North Carolina, and I think they beat Duke at Duke, which is pretty darn impressive. So that's some good stuff right there. My final thoughts overall on the ACC, I liked the whole gameplay. I liked the whole dividing of the ACC. I just wish it could have been a little bit more competitive. I mean, it was competitive for the most part in the North with Notre Dame, Pitt, and Louisville. Syracuse was competitive for the first two matches, and then they dropped off against Notre Dame and Louisville. And then Boston College wasn't anywhere to be seen in the ACC North. They just went winless, and they didn't even force a fifth set. So yeah, the ACC Central between Duke, North Carolina, Virginia Tech, and NC State, it was the more interesting and dramatic league. It was supposed to be Duke's for the winning, and then Virginia Tech came out of nowhere, and then North Carolina came out of nowhere, and then Duke kind of fell apart. And Duke kind of proved my theory right when I said Duke doesn't really have the roster, just because I thought Duke cruised through their first two matchups, and then when they met North Carolina, they said North Carolina decided to punch them in the jaw. So there's that, and I actually do need to preview or recap the last two matchups in the ACC, and that came from North Carolina when they played Virginia. And let's just say Virginia showed more fight against North Carolina than they did against Duke. So the first matchup, which was on Halloween night, North Carolina took the first set 25-20, and then they took the second set 25-15. And it looked like North Carolina was going to win the third set with the greatest of ease. And then Virginia decided to push the match to a fourth set, winning the third set 25-23. Then the fourth set, North Carolina just stood tall and didn't let Virginia get back into the match, as they took the fourth set 25-20, which was good. North Carolina hit 312. Now that's a hitting percentage. If you're hitting in the 300s or higher, that's when you're at your best. Virginia hit 197, and it's kind of tough because you can't really fault Virginia all that much, because again, just like Virginia Tech, they had their season postponed for a little bit, and they eventually had to get back on their feet after they sustained a lot of injuries and they had a COVID outbreak. So I give Virginia a little credit. The thing that really hurt Virginia was that they got outdug 54-44, and the hitting percent was just a nightmare for Virginia, as North Carolina hit 680 in the second set, and they only had 2 hitting errors, which was quite impressive. When you only have 2 hitting errors, that's when you're hot. And the other team just didn't block the ball well, which is funny because Virginia outblocked North Carolina 11-6, which I thought was quite the standout stat. The only problem is Virginia didn't get any production from any other departments, which is kind of sad, but this just goes to show you that North Carolina is a better team than everyone gives them credit for. I think North Carolina is in the same boat as Virginia. The thing about North Carolina is that they actually got punched in the mouth by Virginia Tech in their first game. I think it was the first or second game. Either way, Virginia Tech beat them one time, and then I think that woke them up, and that galvanized them to take down Duke on the road, which was quite the impressive win. I knew North Carolina had it in them. And then, as for the stat leaders for UNC, they're led by Parker Austin, who had 22 kills. Destiny Cox and Isaiah Buckner each had 10 kills. In terms of aces, Parker Austin and Karena Whirl each had 2 aces to lead the team. In terms of digs, Karena Whirl had 14 digs, while Isaiah Buckner and Annabelle Archer had 13 and 11 kills, respectively. In terms of Virginia and their stat leaders, they were led by Sarah Billiard and Christine Jarman, who each had 13 kills. Jana Francis had 7 kills to chip in as well. In terms of blocks, Zen Benabi had 6 blocks on the night, which I'm pretty sure that's like majority of those blocks were block assists. So that'd probably be like 3, but she got her hand in like 6 of those blocks. So that's some impressive stuff. Alexandra Spencer had 15 digs to lead Virginia, but that was kind of it. Like, their next dig leader was Josie Williams, who had 6 digs, which that's not going to get the job done if you're Virginia. But again, it's not so much Virginia wasn't good. It was just that they were going on 3 straight match days. They were on the road, and more importantly, they just were outmatched. North Carolina was just the better team. And again, it's no disrespect to Virginia, but North Carolina was just the better team. Like, you are what your record says, and North Carolina is indeed a good team in their region. So, in the second and last match of the ACC, North Carolina took the first set 25-20, and then the second set, Virginia took the second set 25-22. Then the third set, the Tar Heels took set 3 quite convincingly, 25-17. Then the fourth set was quite dramatic. It was just back and forth action. I would have rather watched that than a certain NFL game that I'm not going to be mentioning today, and I will be mentioning tomorrow or on Friday. So, anyway, UNC, North Carolina and Virginia were both going down to the wire in set 4, but then the Tar Heels pulled off the set 4 win, 25-23, and the match, which was quite impressive. Virginia hit 190 while North Carolina hit 152. In set 3, Virginia just looked flat as they hit -33. And North Carolina was no better as they hit only 0.87. So yeah, that was a little disappointing. And one hitting percentage that stood out to me was North Carolina hitting 400 in the match. It's basically 40%, so they only had 2 hitting errors, too, so that's some good stuff. In terms of aces, North Carolina won that battle 9-4. They won the dig battle 46-41. The 2 teams tied in overall blocks with 9. In terms of individual leaders, North Carolina was led by Carly Peck, who had 16 kills, while Isaiah Buckner and Destiny Cox had 14 and 10 kills, respectively. In terms of aces, Karena Whirl had 3 aces, while Annabelle Archer and Malin Mitrovic had 2 aces apiece. In terms of digs, Whirl had 19 digs, while Buckner and Archer had 7 and 6 digs. Surprisingly, I thought they were going to have another double-digit digger, but that wasn't the case. So, but still good stuff. And then Virginia was led by Sarah Billiard and Christine Jarman, who each had 12 kills. Mila Cyprian had 10 kills. In terms of aces, Mila Cyprian had 2 aces, while Alexandra and Wilson had 1 ace apiece. In terms of digs, Christine Jarman had 11 digs to give her that nice little double-double. Alexandra Spencer had 9 digs, while Megan Wilson had 8 digs. So there's that. So back to my thoughts on the whole ACC. I liked when it came down to the ACC South, I was kind of disappointed in the fact that the ACC South couldn't finish all their games. Like, poor Florida State. They only got to play 6. I think they got to play only 4 games, and they only won 1 game, and that was against Miami. Their other 3 losses were against Miami and Georgia Tech. So to me, I wasn't too happy about how. I mean, Florida State couldn't do anything because of the COVID outbreak, and it's kind of tough when you're in that situation. So yeah, like it's just a bummer for Florida State. I felt for the kids. And more importantly, I just think the ACC South was just one-sided. My disappointing team from the ACC South was Miami. Now, I also could tag them as my most improved team of the ACC, as the ACC overall. However, nothing really screamed out to me saying that Miami was the greatest team out there. I mean, their win over Georgia Tech was impressive, but they lost to Florida State and they lost to Clemson, which was a little bit of a letdown. And they also had to go 4 sets against Wake Forest, which to me is a very disappointing thing, because I think on any given day, I think Miami could have swept Wake Forest. But I digress. The good thing about Miami is that they have a good freshman class, and their future looks very bright. So I think that they're going to be in good shape going forward. So, yeah. So I really can't wait to see. Another thing that was disappointing in the ACC was that we didn't get to see Louisville versus Notre Dame Part 2. And I wanted to see Louisville Notre Dame Part 2. But maybe they'll play it in 2021. They have to play it in 2021. If they don't, I riot. I'm just kidding. I won't riot. I really won't riot. But I swear, I want to see Notre Dame at Louisville Part 2, man. Like, I don't care if it has to be even played at Staples Center. Give us Louisville Notre Dame Part 2, man. Like, come on, man. But anyway, that's the last part of the ACC. I think that's going to be it for the ACC. Now to move on to last week's noteworthy matchup, the matchup of the week being Kentucky against Missouri. So the first matchup between the Wildcats and the Tigers was very, very amazing. The first set, Missouri took in close and dramatic fashion against Kentucky, winning 25-23. Then the second set, Missouri, I think, led by as many as 6 to start out, and then it looked like Missouri was going to take that second set and go up 2-0 in the match. But suddenly, Kentucky managed to show their true strides, as they were led by players such as Allie Stumler and Avery Skinner, and they took the second set 35-33. That is going the distance right there. The only thing that would have been even crazier is if they took the set in the 40 mark range. But winning set 2 was just a big momentum booster for Kentucky, as they took the third set 25-20, and then they took the fourth set 25-18, winning the first match. In the first match, Kentucky was led by Stumler and Skinner, who each had 21 kills. And let me just tell you this about Kentucky. Kentucky had the number 1 recruiting class in the class of 2021. That just goes to show you how tough and dominant Kentucky is. And that just goes to show you that this could probably be Kentucky's year to win the SEC. It's their conference to probably lose unless Florida or Texas A&M challenges them and dethrones them. But Kentucky has the great number 1 recruiting class, and they might be on their way to having another great recruiting class this upcoming year. Like, Kentucky is the team that gets rich as they're the definition of the rich get richer. It also helps that they have players that they scout in Kentucky. I think Kentucky is one of the hotbeds for college volleyball players. That in California as well, a la Assumption. So there's that. In terms of assists, Madison Lilly had 51 assists. In terms of digs, Allie Stumler had 13 digs, along with Gabby Curry. And in terms of service aces, Curry had 3 aces, which is some pretty good stuff. And as a hitting percentage, Kentucky hit .358. That just goes to show you how offensive-orientated Kentucky is. And it's pretty impressive if you ask me. It's a beautiful thing. And also Kentucky had 13 blocks, which that's going to make any team tough. Now for the Missouri stats. Missouri was led by Kylie DeBerg, who had 22 kills. Anna Dixon had 18 kills, and Kenneth Sauer had 12 kills. Andrea Fuentes had 48 assists, while in terms of digs, they were led by DeBerg, they were led by Emily Brown, who had 16 digs. DeBerg had 11 digs, and Missouri as a whole outdug Kentucky 54-46. The one thing that hurt Missouri was their blocks. They had a whopping 4 blocks the whole game. 4 blocks the whole game. How do you have 4 blocks? You're the number 9 ranked team. You're playing at home. You're facing one of the high offensive orientated teams such as Kentucky, and you come up with 4 blocks. How? You can't do that against Kentucky. Kentucky eats that defense up for breakfast. No. Come on now. Come on, Missouri. Do better. I will say this about Missouri. They hit 245. And they also had 7 service aces of their own. They had 3 service aces from DeBerg, while Emily Brown and Aaron Williamson had 2 service aces apiece. But overall, I get that this was supposed to be a high-powered, offensive-orientated match, but you can't just have 4 blocks the whole game. One of them was solo, while 6 were block assists. In other words, half blocks. Either way, it was just so disappointing. How do you come up with just 4 blocks? That's how you lose crucial SEC games. And I expected better from Missouri. I wanted Missouri to react better after losing that second set, but instead they kind of just went into fetal position and let Kentucky beat them up. So that was the disappointing part. So now for the second matchup between Kentucky and Missouri. Missouri took the first set against Kentucky, winning 25-19, and it looked like Missouri was actually going to hit their stride. And then just like the last match, Kentucky took the second set, except they had a little bit of an easier time winning that second set, as they won 25-21 the second set. Then in the third set, Kentucky really brought out the big guns as they dominated the third set, winning that 25-13. Missouri was just in no rhythm whatsoever. Then the fourth set, Kentucky continued their dominance and just took the fourth set 25-16. After set number 2, Missouri just looked so out of it. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. I just could not believe this. I couldn't believe what I just saw. So, in terms of Kentucky, they were led by Allie Stumler, who had 22 kills. She had 9 hitting errors, but she hit 241 for the match, so that's alright. Azani Teeler also chipped in 14 kills. I don't even know who that is, but the fact that she's coming up big for Kentucky just makes the Wildcats a much dangerous team. And then Avery Skinner had 11 kills and 4 hitting errors for a hitting percentage of .250. Madison Lilly had 47 assists, while in terms of digs, they were led by Gabby Curry, who had 15 digs. Lilly had 11 digs for her double-double, and then Skinner added 10 digs for her double-double. In terms of Missouri, they were led by Kylie DeBerg, who had 14 kills, while Anna Dixon had 12 kills. Andrea Fuentes had 37 assists, while in terms of digs, now digs they only had one player in double digits in terms of digs, and that was Emily Brown, who had 13 digs. I was very disappointed. Now, remember how I said that the block difference in the first match was a thing? Guys, everybody, listen. So, Kentucky had a whopping 11 blocks. Okay, not as high as the previous one, but they had 7 solo blocks. That alone is impressive. When you have 7 solo blocks, that is when you're doing something correct. Either that or someone in the stat book screwed up. But that's not likely. Either way, 7 solo blocks by itself is impressive. 11 blocks as a whole is just even more impressive. That's just the cherry on top. Alright, now for Missouri's blocks. Missouri's blocks, everyone, guys, everybody. Missouri had a whopping, drumroll please, 4.5 blocks. Just when you thought Missouri couldn't get any lackluster in terms of the block department, they had 4.5 blocks. 4.5! You can't have 4, you cannot have 4 that number in terms of blocking. You're facing the number 3 team in the country, the nation, and you're coming up with 4.5 blocks? Ah! And then in terms of digs, Kentucky outdug Missouri 55-43. That is a plus 12 difference in digs for Kentucky. They had every right to win. Oh wait, I'm looking at the wrong stat. I'm sorry. I actually looked at the wrong statistic in terms of I actually looked at the incorrect stat in terms of blocks and service aces. This was now I'm looking at the wrong stat. So, in terms of blocks, Kentucky had 8 blocks, while Missouri had 8 blocks of their own. Oops. Either way, I guess Missouri had better blocks. But in terms of aces, I'm looking at this a little more carefully. Kentucky had 7 service aces, while Missouri had 1 service ace. That's even worse. Okay, that's just even worse right there for Missouri. They had 1 service ace while giving up 7 of them to Kentucky. You can't do that! And then the first match, Kentucky had 7 service aces as well. Granted, Missouri had 7 service aces, but they had 1 ace in the second match. No! Bad Missouri. You do not do that. You bad person. No. Like, it was one thing with the blocks. Like, Missouri actually had 8 blocks to 8 blocks for Kentucky. So, overall, Missouri blocked better, but then their serve-receive looked crappier, and they got outdug. That's not how a number 9 team in the nation plays. Just my opinion. Either way, Kentucky is still undefeated at 4-0, and for the most part, Missouri is going to need to figure it out. So, anyway, all that shouting, we're actually going to take ourselves a quick little break, but let us pop into the chat room to see who dropped by. And Marcus says, great show, brother. I have to go prepare. Hey, I appreciate it, man. Definitely do check out Marcus's show, Gloves Off. He gives you what you want, what you need, and he is rocking a crispy iSports Radio t-shirt. And he's coming at you straight from your mama's basement. So definitely do check out Marcus's show. And I definitely do appreciate the kind words, Marcus. I'll be popping by to check on your show as well. So, anyway, before we go into a commercial break, iSports Radio is actually sponsored by Another App Co. Another App Co. is a developing company in Corona, California, where it creates apps that they love and shares it with the world. They've created apps such as Facefly, the BS Detector, the Poop Shooter, the Beatbox app, and Meme. They have plenty of more apps that's going to be created coming soon. All of those apps can be found in the Google App Store, and they will soon be coming to Apple apps. You can check out Another App Co. at www.anotherappco.com. Once again, Another App Co. creating apps that they love and sharing it with the world. Now we will be right back after these messages. You are listening to Set Point here on iSports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hey guys, it's Blake Kinley. better known as H-Town Blake to some of you. Happy to announce that Bases Loaded is back in full force. We'll be bringing that high heat every Tuesday night here on IE Sports Radio. So come home, get ready, dig into that batter's box, and see if you can chase that high heat, baby. So we'll be coming to you live with all the stats, all the rundowns, all the division rivalries, and every team that's going to make the playoff push to get to that one and only October and get to the pinnacle of what baseball is, to hoist that Commissioner's Trophy when it's all said and done.
Hey sports fans, do you like wine? Well, we've got the show for you. This is Let's Wine About Sports, a show where we talk about wine and sports simultaneously. From the classic Cabernet Sauvignon all the way down to the grapes that you've never even heard of before. Oh yeah, we cover it all. And we'll talk about a little bit of sports as well. Football, hockey, collegiate, women's sports, it doesn't matter. We're going to talk about it all, and we're going to whine about it all. So join me Monday at 8 p.m. on IU Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
What's good, fight fans? It's your boy, Marcus Los Great, here to give you what you want, here to give you what you need. Yeah, man. Yeah. I'm coming to you live, straight from your mama's basement with a crispy, awesome white tea. We are coming to you live every Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Powered by IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
And that right there was the voice of none other than Marcus Losgreat. You could check him out on Gloves Off in about 1 hour and 5 minutes, as after this show, he'll be coming on at 7 p.m. Pacific Time, 10 p.m. Eastern Time. So, and it's a beautiful thing. Like, it's just a beautiful thing that he covers boxing, MMA, combat sports, you name it. So, anyway, back to some set point action. Now we are in segment 2 of set point, and honestly, there's not a whole lot of noteworthy volleyball matches to deal with this week. Like, it's kind of disappointing, actually. Like, I thought there would have been more noteworthy matchups, but there really isn't. There's only the number two Baylor at No.1 Texas, and then there's this other good, sneaky good volleyball matchup. So, before we get into No.1 Texas versus No.2 Baylor. We have ourselves a sneaky good game going on in the SEC this weekend. And that sneaky good game happens to be none other than Arkansas versus at number 9 Missouri. Arkansas is knocking on the door of being in the top 15, while Missouri is coming off of their 2-match loss to Kentucky. The thing about Arkansas is, however, is that they are undefeated on the season. Yep, that's right, I said it. Arkansas is undefeated, and that's kind of impressive. They're 4-0 to start the year, which I'm impressed. So that's why I gave them a little round of applause. So looking at Arkansas as a whole, they've only played 4 matches. They are led by Jillian Gillen, who has 70 kills on the season. And she's a sophomore outside hitter. Taylor Head has 56 kills, and she's a freshman outside hitter. Senior middle blocker Elizabeth Pamphile has 35 kills on the year, and Haley, I'm going to butcher her last name, and junior redshirt outside hitter Haley Duragel has 31 kills on the season, so that's good. In terms of assists, junior setter Gracie Ryan has 183 assists, while in terms of digs, they are led by Lauren Evans, who is the junior defensive specialist, who has 63 digs. Head is second in digs with 60, while Gracie Ryan is third in digs with 47. I want to say Lauren Evans is the libero, because they have her listed as a defensive specialist, but I don't know, maybe she's transitioning? I don't know. So here's the thing about Arkansas. I didn't even know Arkansas was 4-0 until I saw that until I saw the actual schedule. Then I saw that they had 4 wins. I'm like, okay, who is this team beaten? Let me tell you all who they have beaten. Oh my gosh, guys. So, I need to tell you who they've beaten. The teams that Arkansas has beaten are Mississippi State. They beat them both in 5 sets, which is cool. Then they beat Ole Miss in 4 sets the first match, and then 3 sets the second, 3 sets in the second match. Do you want to know the combined overall record of Ole Miss and Mississippi State? The combined overall record of Ole Miss and Mississippi State is 0-8. 0-8. Arkansas has beaten a team that has lost a combined 8 straight matches and has not won a single match on the year. I couldn't believe it. That's who Arkansas has beaten? I can't say really the same for Missouri, though, because their 2 wins are against Alabama, which isn't good. But Alabama is not a good women's volleyball team. Nothing against them, but again, they are what the record shows, and last year they just weren't good. At least Missouri lost to Kentucky, and they were somewhat competitive. It's just that after the second set, they just digressed, and they went downward. But, I couldn't believe, of all the matches I saw this week, that was Missouri and Arkansas was the best one. The second best one behind Baylor and Texas. Alright, so now for Missouri stats. Alright, Missouri is led by senior outside hitter Kylie DeBerg, who has 67 kills, and she has 32 digs. Anna Dixon, sophomore outside hitter, has 50 kills. Sophomore outside hitter Kenna Sauer has 33 kills as well. So this is a team that likes to go on the outside instead of more so than the middle. So in terms of assists, they are led by Andrea Fuentes, who has a grand total of 158 assists through 4 matches. And then Emily Brown leads the team in digs with 53. In terms of hitting percentages, this team is hitting .273. I also got to see Arkansas's hitting percentage. Arkansas is hitting a grand total of .243 while allowing their opponents to hit .200. Okay, well, .243, you would think they'd be hitting a better hitting percentage because you're facing 2 winless teams, but I won't complain. Missouri is hitting .273, but is allowing their opponents to hit .273, which is quite amazing. Like, you're hitting .273 and you're allowing your opponent to hit .273. That's quite interesting. Alright, anyway, okay, for this matchup, I kind of don't want to take a crap on Arkansas too much, but I'm just going to say it like this. Arkansas now has the toughest gauntlet of a schedule going forward, because every SEC team only gets to play 8 games. Arkansas has gone 4-0, beating Mississippi State and Ole Miss. That's the good news. You want to know what the bad news is? They're facing Missouri this week. And you want to know what's even worse? Arkansas has to go on the road to face Texas A&M, and they're number 7 in the nation. And I actually want to say let's just check out. Let me just double check Arkansas' schedule. Yeah, actually no. Arkansas is at Missouri this week, and then they're at home against Texas A&M. And Texas A&M is number 7 in the nation. So, yeah, Arkansas, you're now facing the true start of your season. So, as for Missouri, I don't think they're going to have another down pair of games like they did last week against Kentucky. Like, Kentucky is just on another level, and their freshman class just makes them so much better. As for Missouri, I could see them bouncing back, but consider this. Missouri has also had some inconsistencies as well, as in all but one of their matchups, they've had to go past. They've allowed their opponent to take at least one set. They allowed Alabama to take a set in their first match, and then in the second match against Alabama, Missouri swept Alabama. And then we all know the whole story with Kentucky against Missouri. So I don't know if Missouri is fully consistent, but I will say this. I personally think that Missouri will get back on track. However, Arkansas will probably give Missouri a somewhat of a battle. I could see them giving them a little bit of a barn burner. The problem is with Arkansas is that they're on the road. Like, it was one thing to be on the road against Mississippi State and escape with 2 5-set victories, but now they're facing Missouri. They're facing a top 10 opponent, and this Missouri team I think they're going to get back on track. I have Missouri taking the first match in 4 sets, and then I have Missouri taking the second match in 4 sets as well. Again, it wouldn't overly shock me if one of those matches went 5, but to me, I just think Missouri is just the better team. If Arkansas does win one of those matches, then that's really cool, but it's not. I don't see Arkansas winning both matches. Like, to me, I just don't see it happening. But again, this is the second best matchup of the week, because there was no other matchups. I think every other matchup was just a mismatch. Like in the Sun Belt Conference, there wasn't anything that stood out to me. Texas, and something I got to also note in the Sun Belt Conference, Texas State and Coastal Carolina have been dominating conference play, and they're probably going to be the number 1 seeds in the up-and-coming Sun Belt Conference tournament. And I also got to give props to the Sun Belt Conference for keeping up with the Sun Belt Conference tournament. Every year they have a Sun Belt Conference tournament, and I was thinking that they were going to have a Sun Belt Conference tournament because of everything that would happen with COVID and whatnot. Like, I didn't even know the Sun Belt Conference was going to have a season, but the fact that they've even got something going is quite astounding. So, kudos, Sun Belt Conference. I only wish the Big 12 would have a conference tournament, or the ACC, or the Actually, no, there isn't. Or the SEC. Like, the SEC only gets 8 matchups. Like, I imagine they're going to have more matchups in the winter time. But for the Big 12, their little conference matchup is everyone's going to be playing right now. The Big 12 has no restrictions on what's going on. So whoever wins the conference in the fall will automatically get a spot into the postseason. And for the NCAA tournament field, like I said a few weeks ago, we're back in September. The postseason tournament field has now been reduced from 64 teams all the way down to 48 teams. And 16 teams will get an automatic qualifier by winning their conference. That means 32 teams will be at-larges. So it's a whole lot of minimal error. Like, there's not a whole lot of room for error if you're an at-large team. So, yeah, that's kind of a thing. Like, if you're an at-large team, you gotta be careful. Like, now, like, it's pretty much do or die when it comes to winning a conference. So, but I imagine the SEC is going to keep up they're going to continue the rest of SEC play in the winter of 2021 and all that. So at least the Big 12 is getting all the conference matchups all out of the way, and then the Big 12 will continue to... The Big 12 will be able to have matchups... We'll be able to have non-conference matchups after the little layoff. So it's going to give Texas and Baylor some more competition, and hopefully they schedule some stiff competition. Hopefully they schedule like the Stanfords, the Floridas, maybe the Cincinnatis and whatnot, etc., etc. All right, so that's the match. So I'm getting too out of track here, but this is a good time to, now that I mentioned the Big 12, this is the perfect opportunity to get into the matchup of the week. And this is the matchup, the biggest regular season matchup of the 2020 season. No. 2 Baylor at No. 1 Texas. Let's sound the thunder. Alright, so, yeah, I had to get that thunder sound out of the way. Alright, so it's a matchup that I have been waiting for ever since August. Let's start off with the away team. No. 2 Baylor. Baylor is 11-1 overall and 11-1 in conference. They are 6-0 at home and 5-1 on the road. Their only blemish was to Kansas, who beat them in the first matchup in 5 sets, which that was the first game of the season, and maybe Baylor just had an off night. So Baylor is led by senior outside hitter Yasonia Presley, who has 189 kills, while second on the team in kills is sophomore outside hitter Lauren Harrison, who has 115 kills. Marquis Vandermark, the junior opposite, is third on the team in kills with 98, while sophomore middle blocker Cara McGee has 93 kills. Setter Callie Williams has 43 kills, while she has 441 assists and 112 digs. The 112 digs are second on the team, while junior libero Chanel Bramschreiber has 159 digs to lead the team in digs. Callie Williams also leads the team in service aces with 13, while Campbell Bowden has 10 service aces on the season. And as a team, Baylor is hitting .290 while holding their opponents to 131. Not bad. Not bad, honestly. So that's pretty much the big time stats for Baylor. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Now for Texas. No. 1 Texas. 10-0 overall, 10-0 in conference play, 6-0 at home, and 4-0 away, but that's not really matter. Texas, like I said, is a perfect 6-0. They are led by Logan Eggleston, the junior outside hitter, who has 169 kills, while Skylar Fields, the sophomore opposite, has 108 kills. Breon Butler, the junior middle blocker, has 78 kills, while Asia O'Neal, the redshirt sophomore middle blocker, has 76 kills as well. And then the other middle blocker, Molly Phillips, has 64 kills. So when it comes to Texas, they like to utilize the middle blocker position quite well because they have 3 middles. Either one of them is playing opposite or they just like to rotate middles in and out. It also could be for blocking purposes as well. So, like, this team as a whole has totaled 100 blocks, and they are exactly at 100 blocks, while Baylor is at 109.5 blocks. So, that's pretty impressive. At least they're blocking the ball well. In terms of assists, they are led by Jenna Gabriel, who has 406 assists. She is a junior setter, and Gabriel also has 79 digs, who is second on the team in digs. Morgan O'Brien, the graduate libero, yes, she's a graduate student, but she is able to play. She has 131 digs, and she leads the Longhorns in digs, while Nalani Iosia is third on the team in digs with 68 digs. Logan Eggleston is fourth on the team in digs with 67. I said Nalani Iosia is fourth on the team. She's third on the team in digs. And then Sydney Peterson has 54 digs as well, and she's the defensive specialist, which is cool. So this is quite the fascinating battle. This is a battle of 2 teams that are both talented yet youthful. And that's a scary thing for the rest of the NCAA because these 2 teams are going to be good for years to come. Obviously, losing Yasonia Presley is going to be tough for Texas, and losing Morgan O'Brien to graduation is going to hurt as well. But they return all those players that I just mentioned. They return Eggleston, they return Phillips, Iosia, Butler, O'Neal, Fields, and Gabriel. And as for Baylor, they are going to lose Yasonia Presley at the end of the season, but they also return all the players that I just mentioned. They return Williams, Van Slate, Vandermark, McGee, Harrison, and Bramschreiber. So these are 2 teams that are very young, but are very talented and are hungry for the Big 12 championship. So honestly, it's tough to predict between these 2 teams. I hate how I have to predict both of these teams because I'm probably going to be wrong with both of them, but I'm just going to say this. I think Texas takes the first match in 4 sets, and then Baylor takes the second match in 5 sets. Here's the thing about Baylor. I think I think Texas is more consistent than Baylor. I think Baylor has the firepower, but Texas is more consistent, not just offensively, but defensively too. And their setter is also pretty darn good as well, despite her being, I think she's only like 5'7". Like, she is an absolute beast of a setter. And she comes from Hawaii, so that's irrelevant. I digress. But I just think Texas, to me, is just the more hungrier team. Because remember, Texas is on the revenge tour the Longhorns lost in the Sweet 16 of the NCAA tournament last year. Baylor, you could say the same thing, but they made it to the Final Four. They just lost to a hot Wisconsin team, which was just playing out of this world. And also, I also gotta give the Texas just because Texas had a bye, and they should be the more fresher team when they take the court. I don't think they're gonna have fans at this game, which is quite the bummer because the Longhorn Gymnasium can get packed. And I'm pretty sure there are Texas Longhorns fans would probably be lining up to get into a matchup like that against Baylor. So it's kind of like how Nebraska fans are, as they're super passionate when it comes to their women's volleyball team. So, yeah. But to me, I think that these 2 teams are going to split the matchup. Here's the problem with that for Baylor, though. If they split the matchup between Texas, Baylor is obviously still going to be 1 game behind Texas for the Big 12 conference. The thing about Texas is that they don't sleep. They don't sleep on anyone. in all their matches, they've been consistent except for when they had to play Kansas State. But even against Kansas State, they just made Kansas State look not as competitive as they were in the second and third set. Like, to me, I think Texas is just a little bit more complete than Baylor. Like, I think Baylor is also good, but they're not as consistent as Texas is. Like, Baylor has been suspect since their first match against Kansas, when they lost to Kansas. And then they also had to go 5 with Oklahoma and Texas Tech. And then they also had to go 4 with West Virginia. But that's the thing. I think Baylor's going to get tripped up in the first match. And then in the second match, Baylor's going to figure it out. And then they're going to win the second match, allowing a split. Here's the thing about Texas, though. After this week, Texas plays at West Virginia. Now, if there's one thing about Texas, I don't see them losing unless it's to Baylor. But if Baylor doesn't beat Texas at least once, Texas is going to win the Big 12. That's all I gotta say. Like, if Baylor doesn't even salvage a split, they're all but screwed. If Baylor gets swept in this matchup, if they lose both of their matchups, then Baylor is all but toast going forward, because they will no longer have the tiebreaker, and they're going to have to bank on West Virginia and TCU to beat Texas twice. And that is a recipe for... That's not happening. That's not going to happen. I just don't see it happening. So Baylor really needs to pull out all the stops, and they really need to come up big against the Longhorns. And this is a rivalry game, and anything can happen in a rivalry game, but to me, I just think Texas is the better team. It is going to be a split, but I just see... I'm pretty sure Texas is going to get the better result of this matchup. Like, even if they lose one, then they're still in good shape. Like, the only way Texas doesn't win the Big 12 is if West Virginia or TCU beats them down the road, or if Baylor just wins both matchups. And here's the thing about Baylor. Even if Baylor wins both matchups against Texas, they're not guaranteed to win the Big 12 conference, because Baylor is still inconsistent, because there's another challenger awaiting Baylor in a couple more weeks, and that happens to be Kansas State. Now, granted, Kansas State isn't like Texas. Kansas State is a good team. They are the most improved team in the Big 12, but they aren't like screaming to everyone, we are going to win the Big 12. That's not going to be for a few more years down the road. So sorry, Kansas State. But here's the thing about Baylor. Their remaining schedule gets super tough. Granted, Baylor does get 2 byes. They get a bye next week, and then they get a bye... actually, no. They only get a bye next week, and then after they play Kansas State, they get an extended break. So that's cool, I guess. I think when it comes to this Big 12 schedule, when they have games in late November, I think that's just for TCU to like make up their series against Texas, because maybe TCU had to postpone it and whatnot. So either way, even if Baylor does win two out of 2 matches against Texas, they still have to get past the vastly improved Kansas State. But even so, I think even if the only way Baylor that would happen is if Baylor were to win both matchups against Texas, they would have the tiebreaker over Texas. And let's say Texas runs the table, they beat West Virginia. Then let's say they beat West Virginia and then they beat TCU. Then let's say Baylor loses to Kansas State, and then Baylor and Texas finish with the same exact record. The 2 would tie for first place in the Big 12. However, since the tiebreaker would more than likely be head-to-head matchup, and Baylor would have taken 2 out of 2 matches against Texas, they would be the conference champion. They'd be the conference champion representative, and that would be tough for Texas. But Texas is probably a shoo-in to get into the NCAA tournament. Sure, it's only 32 at-large teams, but I think one of those two teams is going to be a great at-large team. Like, nothing is guaranteed when it comes to this year, especially with COVID. But I will say this. I think whoever doesn't win this series is still going to be dangerous going forward. I think whoever loses, like, let's say Baylor loses both matchups. I think that's still going to fuel their fire because Baylor knows they are better than that. But I think whichever team doesn't get the best results they were looking for, it's just going to make them more dangerous down the road. So, yeah. So I'm still just going to go with my gut and say Texas wins the first matchup in 4 sets, then Baylor wins the second matchup in 5 sets, allowing Texas and Baylor to split their matchups. And remember, Texas has 4 matches remaining while Baylor only has 2. And that's going to be against a tough Kansas State team. So we'll see how it goes for both teams. But to me, I just think Texas is a little bit more complete than Baylor is. So, yeah. So, other than that, it's just, one more thing before I sign off. One thing I am disappointed about in terms of the Texas versus Baylor matchup, it's not going to be streamed on freaking ESPN. It's not going to be on ESPN or ESPN2 or ESPN3. I'm so disappointed. It's only going to be on the Longhorn Network, which is Texas, University of Texas. I'm so disappointed. Like, why? Like, why, ESPN? Why do you not want this matchup to be flexed? Like, let's look at... No. Let's look at the ESPN app. Let's go to Mr. ESPN app, and let's see the NCAA... What's going on Friday on ESPN and ESPN2? You look at Friday. Okay, ESPN is having the University of Miami, number 11 Miami, play at NC State in terms of football. Okay, and that's it. There's no other college football games going on. Why the heck is Texas and Baylor not going to be on ESPN2 or ESPN3? Why? That's so not fair. Like, they were able to have Pitt and Notre Dame and Texas at Kansas State on ESPN2 a few weeks ago. Why can't they have Baylor and Texas? This is number 1 versus number 2. They deserve prime time. I know college volleyball isn't as noteworthy as college football or college basketball, but give these ladies their props. Let the game of volleyball grow. I am so disappointed. Like, come on, ESPN. Like, I would at ESPN, but tell them, why don't you want to put volleyball on ESPN2 or ESPN3, but I feel I'm going to get the whole volleyball is not a sport or whatnot. So either way, I'm just so mad. Like, I think, and by the way, I think when it comes to these, Texas and Baylor, it's going to be on at 5 p.m. Eastern time, I want to say. Let me take a look at the football or the schedule for Baylor. It is 7 p.m. Central time, so that's 5 p.m. Pacific time. So, yeah, I don't know why. Like, why can't we have college volleyball on ESPN2? I'm disappointed. I'm sorry, but I personally am disappointed. As a volleyball fan, I am disappointed. Whatever they have on, whatever ESPN2 and ESPN3 has on at 5 p.m. better be worth it. Otherwise, I might be going on a little bit of a Twitter rant on Friday. So, food for thought. Just my opinion, but I think that number 1 and number 2 should face each other on prime time. Maybe at least put it on CBS okay, not CBS. CBS is a little extreme. Put it on, like, well, I can't, no, I was going to say put it on ABC, but I think there's everything going on ABC, like game shows and whatnot. So, yeah. Still, food for thought on my part. I think college volleyball should be flexed to prime time. Just my take. I mean, again, ESPN has only one college football game going on, so, yeah. But it's whatever. There's no point of crying over spilt milk. What's done is done, and who knows, maybe ESPN will flex Baylor, Texas to primetime on Friday when it comes to like ESPN2 and whatnot. So I think that's going to do it for tonight's show of Set Point. I really enjoyed doing this episode. I'm really psyched for number 1 Texas versus number 2 Baylor. It's going to be a fun time, and I really think it's going to be a great matchup between two really good teams. And whoever wins both matches is going to have 2 legs up on the opposing team. Whereas if Texas wins, they've pretty much all but locked up the Big 12 championship. My only concern going forward is, will there be any noteworthy matchups next week? We'll see. We shall see. Like maybe there will, maybe there won't. So we'll have to see. But hopefully there will be, and it all depends on who wins and who loses this week. So I think that's going to do it for tonight's episode of Set Point. Thank you all for tuning in. And without any further delay, it is time to drop the beat, as I'm about to dip like a banana in chocolate. You feel me? Thank you all for tuning in to tonight's episode of Set Point. Thank you to Marcus, Larry, and Adam for tuning in the chat room. Thank you to everyone listening on the live call. If you are listening on the post-live call, I definitely appreciate you. It really means a lot. And big thank you to all the NCAA volleyball teams that are playing, because without you, I'm probably not doing this show. But I definitely do appreciate it. And big shout to our sponsor, Another Appco, who's doing their thing. Thank you for being the official sponsor for IE Sports Radio. And for everyone here at IE Sports Radio and Another Appco, this is Teran Rodriguez signing off. Have a great rest of the night, be safe, and I will see you Friday for the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. Good night, everybody.